My name is Samantha Liu. I'm 19 years old, and I've spent most of my life being invisible in my own family. I guess that happens when you grow up with a brother like Brandon. He's 2 years older than me and has always been the perfect one, at least in my parents' eyes. Brandon was the kind of kid who could blink at a math test and score an A+. When I studied until 2 a.m. and barely scraped a B+, Mom would pat my shoulder and say, "Good effort." But when Brandon aced his finals without opening a book, she baked him a cake and invited relatives over to celebrate. They didn't even try to hide the favoritism. When Brandon turned 18, they gave him a brand new Kawasaki motorcycle with a custom helmet and matching jacket. I still remember the way the streetlights bounced off that black and chrome finish when he pulled into the driveway, grinning like a hero in a movie. 2 years later, on my birthday, I got a used tablet. The screen was cracked. I smiled, said thank you, and locked myself in the bathroom to cry. I got used to it, being the second thought. The side character, the spare. The only person who ever saw me, really saw me, was my grandmother Evelyn. She was my mother's mother, but they couldn't have been more different. Where Mom was rigid and image-obsessed, Grandma Evelyn was warm, curious, and brutally honest. She remembered every birthday, slipped me $20 bills in my coat pocket when I visited. She told me once, "You've got something they don't see now, but one day they'll regret overlooking you." When I got accepted into the College of Architecture in Seattle, I called her before I called anyone else. I'd received a partial scholarship, enough to cover tuition, but I'd need help with housing and living expenses. "Don't worry," she said without hesitation. "I'll make sure you're taken care of. You focus on your studies." That promise kept me going through the final brutal months of high school. I moved into the dorms the following fall, full of nervous hope and quiet determination. It felt like the start of something better, a clean slate. My parents helped me carry boxes up the stairs, but they didn't stay long. Brandon couldn't come. Too busy with his internships, they said. I waved goodbye from the curb and waited for the monthly support Grandma had promised, but it never came. At first, I thought maybe there had been a delay. Maybe she was traveling or the bank had some issue. But when the second month passed, I called my mom and asked gently if Grandma was okay. "What the hell is wrong with you, Samantha?" she snapped. "Do you think the world owes you something? Your grandmother is old and sick and dealing with her own issues. You should be ashamed of yourself for even bringing it up. Get a job if you need money, like everyone else." So I did. I got a job at a local coffee shop 2 blocks from campus. They paid minimum wage, but sometimes they let us bring home the pastries that didn't sell. That was often dinner. I picked up another gig, doing graphic design commissions for websites and random YouTubers. It wasn't much, but it helped. Barely. I told myself it was temporary, that Grandma would reach out eventually, that maybe something had just gone wrong with the plan. But in the back of my mind, something itched. Something didn't feel right. And I had no idea just how deep that rot went. I kept waiting for Grandma's call. Every day for weeks, I checked my phone like a ritual. I told myself she was just busy, that maybe she didn't want to go through Mom for my banking information. I even checked the mail, hoping for a check or a letter explaining everything. Nothing came. Meanwhile, my life started to unravel in quiet, exhausting ways. The dorm I lived in was old and freezing. The heat only worked half the time, and I couldn't afford space heaters. My roommate, Naomi, was kind but private, until one night she found me curled up on my bed in 2 coats, trying to finish a client's logo on my old glitchy tablet. She didn't say anything. She just handed me a hot cup of instant noodles and sat beside me while I ate in silence. The next morning, she left 2 granola bars on my desk before heading to class. I never forgot that. With the coffee shop job and freelance work, I barely slept more than 4 hours a night. My hands ached from typing. My eyes stung constantly. I started falling asleep in class. I set 3 alarms every night, one to wake me for lectures, one to remind me of project deadlines, and one to start the next shift at the cafe. And still, it wasn't enough. Some weeks, when the cafe was closed for maintenance or the design commissions dried up, I simply didn't eat. Once, the cafe shut down for 5 days due to a rodent inspection. I survived on stale crackers and one free meal Naomi snuck from the dining hall. I told no one. Not my professors, not my family, not even Grandma. I didn't want to sound ungrateful. After all, I had made it to college. That was more than some people got. Then, one night, my laptop, my only real lifeline, gave out. It started smoking in the middle of a freelance job. I stared at the screen as it fizzled and went black. I hadn't saved the file. I just froze. Then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I cried. Ugly, choking sobs that left me shaking on the dorm room floor. Naomi walked in and didn't say a word. She sat down, put a blanket around my shoulders, and whispered, "I'll help." The next day, she borrowed $500 from her parents and handed it to me with a quiet, "Pay me back when you can." I wrote down every cent in a lined notebook. I wasn't going to forget. I wasn't going to let her regret helping me. My parents never asked how I was doing. They texted occasionally to say how impressive Brandon's new internship sounded. According to them, he was too busy to even attend family holidays. Always studying, always rising. I sent a couple of messages asking how Grandma was doing. My mom responded once with, "She's fine. Stop worrying and focus on yourself." So I did. I focused on surviving, on clawing my way through every class, every shift, every debt. I learned how to stretch a box of ramen across 5 meals. I memorized which grocery stores had discount bins near closing. I learned how to smile through exhaustion when a customer yelled about oat milk. But deep down, something never sat right. If Grandma had promised to support me, what had happened to that promise? And why did it feel like everyone was working so hard to keep me in the dark? It was late March when Grandma Evelyn invited me to her 76th birthday dinner. I hadn't been home since Christmas break, which I spent mostly in my dorm, working extra shifts while pretending the silence from my family didn't hurt. But for Grandma, I would make the trip. Always. I scraped together enough money from my last design gig to buy her a small framed photo of us from my high school graduation, the last time I remembered feeling genuinely proud of myself. The ferry ride to Bainbridge Island was gray and windy. I tucked the gift carefully into my coat as I stepped onto the dock, trying not to think about how little I had left in my bank account. When I reached her house, the party was already in full swing. The smell of roasted duck and sweet buns drifted through the air, and laughter spilled from the dining room. The long mahogany table was covered in food, more food than I'd seen in a month. My stomach growled so loud I was afraid someone heard. My mom waved when she saw me. "There you are," she said, air kissing my cheek. "We thought you might not come." I forced a smile and handed Grandma the gift. She opened it slowly, then stared at the photo for a long time. Her hand lingered on my shoulder. "Thank you, my sweet girl," she said. "This means more than you know." The guests began making toasts one by one. Uncle Gene called her the backbone of the family. Aunt Lorraine cried a little talking about how Grandma helped with her mortgage. Even my mom stood and gave a saccharine speech about the matriarch who holds us all together. I didn't speak. I just listened, chewing slowly, trying not to inhale my food too fast. Naomi had insisted I eat a big lunch before I came. I was glad I did. Then, out of nowhere, my cousin Trevor piped up across the table. "Damn, Samantha," he said through a mouthful of shrimp. "You've gotten skinny, like, real skinny. You on one of those starvation influencer diets?" The table quieted. I froze. Before I could reply, my mother jumped in with a fake laugh. "Oh, you know college girls. She's probably doing that fasting trend or whatever. All the girls are doing it now." I opened my mouth to correct her. But then I heard a voice that cut through the noise like a knife. "Trevor's right," Grandma said, her eyes narrowing at me. "Samantha, you're far too thin." She tilted her head, concern etched into every wrinkle on her face. "Isn't the $100 I've been sending you each month enough for food?" The fork dropped from my hand, clattering against the plate with a loud clang. I felt the air go still. Every conversation stopped, heads turned, eyes widened. I stared at her, heart racing. "What money?" I said quietly. "Grandma, I haven't received any money from you. Not since I started college." Silence. Complete, suffocating silence. I watched her face change. Confusion. Then realization. Then something darker. Her gaze shifted slowly to my mother. Deborah? My mom's mouth opened, then closed. This is not the time or place, she started. I wasn't speaking to you. Grandma cut her off. William, would you like to explain? My father, who had been slicing roast duck with surgical precision, set down his knife. His hands trembled slightly. He didn't look up. We've been managing the money, he muttered. Managing it how? Grandma asked, voice like steel. My mother stood. Mother, please. This is a private family matter. Let's not… Sit down, Grandma said. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to make my mom freeze and drop back into her seat like a scolded child. Grandma rose from her chair with regal calm. Everyone, please enjoy the rest of the evening. I'm afraid I'll have to step away for a moment. William, Deborah, my study, now. They didn't argue. They just followed her out of the room in a silent, shameful shuffle. I sat there, stunned, barely hearing the murmurs of small talk resuming. Trevor looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Someone cleared their throat. A spoon clinked nervously against a wine glass. I couldn't taste the food anymore. I just stared at the door to Grandma's study, my ears straining for any sound. But it was quiet, and somehow that silence was louder than any scream. I didn't sleep much that night. Grandma had insisted I stay at the house. After the last guests left, she gave me a warm hug and said simply, I think you should rest here tonight. We'll talk in the morning. I nodded, numb. I lay in the guest room staring at the ceiling, playing and replaying every detail of the dinner in my head. My parents' faces, Grandma's voice. That single sentence, isn't the $1,500 I've been sending you each month enough for food? Like a gong still vibrating in my skull. I had thought I was forgotten. Turns out I was robbed. The next morning, I found Grandma in the kitchen. She was already dressed, her silver hair pinned neatly, the aroma of fresh coffee wafting from the French press. She slid a mug across the table to me and sat down. Her eyes were tired but steady. I know you have questions, she said. I nodded, holding the warm mug in both hands like a shield. I gave your parents money, she said. A lot of it. I didn't want to hassle with setting up transfers to different banks, and your mother insisted she'd handle things for both you and Brandon. I trusted her. How much? I asked softly. Her lips pressed into a line. For you? About $90,000. Enough for housing, food, books, and personal expenses through college, plus the $1,500 every month since you started. I blinked. That was nearly 2 years. My throat tightened. They never gave me a dime. Grandma nodded slowly. I know. I confirmed everything with them last night. And Brandon? I asked, though part of me already knew. She exhaled through her nose. He never went to any internship. He dropped out after 1 semester at community college. Your parents didn't want anyone to know, so they moved him to a condo I bought years ago. Said it was for privacy. In reality, he's been living there, gambling online, day trading with fake crypto tips, and spiraling. But they told me, I started, then stopped. They told everyone he was thriving, she said flatly. He's not. He's deep in debt. He owes money to people you don't joke with. They used your college fund to bail him out multiple times. My stomach turned. I thought about the times I skipped meals, the nights I cried over frozen fingers while working in a broken dorm heater, the shame I felt needing help from Naomi. And the whole time my parents had been throwing my future into a bottomless pit to protect a lie. They've been lying to me for years, I whispered. Grandma reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm sorry, she said, her voice thick. I should have checked. I should have talked to you directly. I assumed they'd do right by you. I swallowed hard. What happens now? She didn't hesitate. You keep studying. That's your job. But from now on, I'll send money to you directly. No more middlemen. No more lies. I couldn't speak. I just nodded as tears burned the back of my eyes. There's one more thing, she added. Last night, I opened my safe and pulled out all the records. I've given your parents over $300,000 in the last 5 years. I thought it was going toward your futures. Instead, they used it to enable Brandon. My fingers gripped the coffee mug like it might keep me from shattering. And the worst part? She said, voice dropping. They never told him no. Not once. They bailed him out every single time. He's never had to feel the consequences. But you've been living through hell while they told you to be more like him. My chest ached with a cold clarity. I had always believed I wasn't good enough. But the truth was, they never gave me the chance to be seen. Grandma stood slowly, her expression firm. I can't change the past, but I can make damn sure you have a future. For the first time in a long time, I felt something flicker in my chest. Hope. By the end of that morning, Grandma had already made the call to her bank. The funds began arriving directly into my personal account before lunchtime. No more excuses, no more gatekeeping. $2,000 every month, like clockwork. I added a little extra, she said as I stared at the notification on my phone. You've been scraping by for too long. It's time you lived like someone who's valued. I didn't know what to say. I just hugged her, tightly. She didn't pull away. Over the next few days, I stayed at Grandma's house while she made appointments. Quiet ones, but urgent. There were lawyers, accountants. One afternoon, I heard the shredder in her office going nonstop. She was cleaning house. I wanted to offer help, but she waved me off. You just rest and eat, she insisted. That's your mission for now. So I did. I slept through the night for the first time in months. I ate real food that didn't come from a dented can or clearance bin. I sat on the back porch with a cup of tea and let my shoulders drop for what felt like the first time in years. On the third night, we went out for dinner, just the two of us. She took me to this small Japanese restaurant tucked between two antique shops on Main Street. She'd gone there with my grandfather when they were young. Over warm miso soup and chicken katsu, she dropped it casually, like commenting on the weather. I've rewritten my will, she said, calmly slicing a piece of tempura. I froze mid-bite. What? You heard me. It's done. You're now my sole heir. I nearly dropped my chopsticks. Grandma, I mean what? Why? She dabbed her lips with a napkin. Your parents have already received more than enough from me. And what have they done with it? Squandered it. Lied. Enabled. You, on the other hand, have proven something far more valuable than academic scores or financial returns. I blinked, speechless. You've proven you have character. I didn't even realize I was crying until I tasted salt. I don't need your money, I said quietly. It's not about need, she replied. It's about trust. She reached across the table, her fingers warm on mine. When I was your age, she said, no one believed in me either. I was just someone's daughter, someone's wife. I had to fight for everything. And when I see you, Samantha, I see someone who fights quietly, but fiercely. That deserves something. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. That night, as we returned to the house, she handed me an envelope. For emergencies, she said. And don't you dare argue. Inside was a check. $10,000. I cried again. Back at school the next week, everything changed. I quit my freelance jobs immediately. The strain that had wrapped around my chest like wire loosened. I finally had the freedom to live like a student, not a survivor. I bought new clothes that actually fit. I stocked my mini fridge with fresh food. I paid Naomi back, every single cent, and treated her to dinner just to say thank you. She cried when I handed her the envelope. For the first time since setting foot on campus, I wasn't drowning. I was breathing. My grades improved, my posture straightened. I joined a design studio study group and didn't feel like a fraud. My professors started learning my name. One even stopped me after class to say, "Your midterm sketches? Some of the most detailed work I've seen all year." I walked home smiling so hard my cheeks hurt. And then, 2 months later, something even more unexpected happened. I was sitting in the campus library sketching floor plans when a familiar scent of lavender and cinnamon reached my nose. I looked up. Grandma stood there, grinning, holding a Starbucks in each hand. "Surprise inspection," she said loudly. Half the students turned to glare. I didn't care. I ran up and hugged her. What are you doing here? I laughed. Just making sure, she said, that at least one of my grandchildren actually goes to college. She winked. It happened the following weekend. Naomi and I had just finished deep cleaning our dorm room. I was sitting at my desk, sipping hot cocoa, sketching a concept for a sustainable housing project. The sunlight warmed the floor, and for once, everything felt still, peaceful. Until there was a knock at the door. Naomi opened it, then glanced back at me with a stiff, unreadable expression. They're here, she mouthed. My stomach dropped. I didn't have to ask who. My parents walked in as if it were normal, as if they had every right to be here. My father went straight to my desk chair and sat down, folding his hands. My mother lingered near Naomi's bed, clutching her purse like it might anchor her to the room. Hello, sweetheart, she said, her voice brittle. I didn't say anything. Naomi grabbed her keys and slipped out with a quiet, I'll give you space. Once the door clicked shut, I turned to them. What do you want? My voice wasn't angry, just cold, distant. We need to talk, Dad said. I gathered. They looked tired. Mom's face was pale, her makeup smudged like she hadn't reapplied since morning. Dad's hair looked grayer than I remembered. They both seemed smaller somehow. We'd like you to speak with your grandmother, Mom said finally. About the will. There it was. No apology, no pretense, just straight to the ask. I let out a soft laugh, not a joyful one, the kind that rises when everything inside you threatens to crack. Not even a hello, not a sorry, just fix the will for us? Dad cleared his throat. You have to understand, Samantha. We're your parents. And Brandon is your son. I know. I've heard it all my life. We're in a really difficult situation right now, Mom added. Brandon's in trouble again. I raised my eyebrows. Still? Shocking. This isn't a joke, Dad snapped. He owes money to some dangerous people. And that's somehow my fault? I stood up, needing distance. Mom reached toward me. He's your brother. Please, just ask Grandma to reconsider. We're not asking for everything. Just enough to get us through. You already had enough to get you through, I cut in. You had my tuition money, my living expenses, my monthly allowance. You took everything she gave me and handed it to him. You watched me struggle while telling me to be more like him. Mom's eyes filled with tears. You don't understand what we've been through. The stress, the fear. And what about me? I said, my voice trembling now. Did you ever once stop to think what it was like for me? Working 2 jobs, skipping meals, crying because my laptop broke and I couldn't afford to fix it. Naomi had to loan me money so I wouldn't fail my classes. You're exaggerating, Mom said, waving it off. That broke something in me. Exaggerating? I said, stepping closer. You want to know what not that bad looked like, Mom? It looked like stealing leftover pastries from the cafe because I hadn't eaten all day. It looked like wearing the same 3 outfits for 2 years because I couldn't afford clothes. It looked like crying myself to sleep in a frozen dorm room while you were telling people Brandon was acing internships. They were silent. You always chose him, I said, quieter now. He got the praise, he got the gifts, he got the money, he got your love. I was just there. Dad stood, his voice gentler. We're trying to make things right now. No, you're trying to protect yourselves. We're family, Mom whispered. I laughed again, hollow this time. You only remember that word when you need something? She looked at me, mascara streaking her cheeks. So that's it? You're just going to abandon us? No, I'm going to protect myself, finally. I opened the door. I'm not talking to Grandma about the will. I'm not changing anything. You made your choices, now live with them. Mom's face crumpled. You're being selfish. That word landed like a slap. It was the same word she used the day I asked about Grandma's money. Get a job. Don't be selfish. I took a breath, every muscle in my body shaking. Get out, I said. She opened her mouth. Now. They walked out slowly, Mom sobbing, Dad not even looking at me. When the door shut, I sank onto my bed. Naomi returned an hour later and found me curled up with my sketchbook still on the floor. She didn't ask. She just sat beside me and passed me a granola bar. "That bad?" she murmured. "Worse," I said, my voice hoarse. "But also final." In the weeks that followed, everything felt sharper, more alive. I threw myself into school with a kind of focus I'd never experienced before. Without the burden of working late nights or rationing every dollar, I could finally breathe. Learn, think. For the first time, I wasn't surviving. I was growing. My GPA climbed fast. I wasn't the invisible girl in the back of the classroom anymore. Professors started calling on me. I led a group project that earned our class the highest score in the department. Even the architecture program director asked if I was considering applying for the summer research fellowship. "I'd love to," I said without hesitation. Before, I would have declined. I wouldn't have had the time or the mental space. But now, I had both. Naomi noticed the change before I did. "You don't walk like you're bracing for a fight anymore," she said one night while we folded laundry. "You're lighter, happier." I smiled. "That's what happens when you're not constantly starving or hiding a cracked laptop screen from your professor." We both laughed. And that was the thing. I laughed more. I slept more, I ate without guilt. I went to the farmer's market and bought fresh fruit for no reason other than I wanted it. Every Sunday, Grandma called. Sometimes we talked about school. Sometimes about books. Sometimes she just told me ridiculous stories about her youth, like the time she dyed her hair electric blue at 70 and scared her bridge club. "You know," she said during one call, "I was the forgotten child too. My sister was the beauty and my brother was the golden boy. I was just there." "How did you deal with it?" I asked. "I built my own life," she said simply. "I found people who saw me, and I let them in. I carried that with me." Then, one Thursday evening in April, just before finals, I got a call from my Aunt Rachel, my mom's younger sister. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. "Hi, Samantha," she said, her voice low. "I thought you should know. Your parents sold the house." I sat down slowly. They're renting a small apartment now, barely enough for the three of them. The money from the house was used to pay off some of Brandon's debts. He got involved with a group, loan sharks, it sounds like. It got dangerous. I said nothing. "I'm not saying this so you'll help," she added quickly. "Just thought you should know. He's in a rehab facility again. This one's more intensive. Maybe it'll stick this time." When we hung up, I sat there in silence. I didn't feel rage or triumph or pity, not exactly. I just felt distant, like watching a storm roll across someone else's skyline. That night, I called Grandma. "I talked to Aunt Rachel," I told her. "They sold the house. Brandon's in rehab again." Grandma sighed on the other end. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," I said, and I meant it. "I feel sad for them, but not responsible." "That's good," she said firmly, "because you're not." I looked around my room. The tiny string lights Naomi and I had strung up over winter break still glowed warm against the walls. My portfolio was neatly stacked, my research application half finished but full of promise. I had built a life, a new one, from the ashes of their choices, and I was going to protect it with everything I had. Finals week swept through campus like a storm. The library buzzed with anxious energy, students hunched over laptops, highlighters bleeding through textbooks, the hum of quiet panic in the air. But for once, I didn't feel overwhelmed. I felt focused. I had my flashcards, my project mock-ups, my research proposal nearly complete. And for the first time since I started college, I wasn't surviving on adrenaline and caffeine and desperation. I was here, really here, living. Then one night, walking back to the dorm after a long study session, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something in my chest told me to answer. "Hello?" There was a pause, then a voice I hadn't heard in nearly a year. "Hey, it's Brandon." I stopped walking. He continued quickly, like he expected me to hang up. "I'm calling from the facility. It's part of the program, making amends. Facing people you've hurt." I said nothing, letting the wind fill the silence between us. "I know what Mom and Dad did with your money," he said. "I didn't know at the time, but that doesn't excuse anything." Still, I stayed quiet. I want to say I'm sorry. I know it doesn't fix what happened, but I needed you to hear it. I understand now. What I cost you." My throat tightened. For months, I had rehearsed what I would say if I ever got the chance. To yell, to curse, to demand answers. But in this moment, all I felt was the stillness of the night and the heaviness of everything left behind. "I don't hate you," I said softly. Another pause. "But I'm not ready to forgive you either." "I don't expect that," he replied. "Just thank you for listening." When the call ended, I sat on a bench near the dorm courtyard, watching the campus lights flicker in the trees. Laughter floated from a group of students walking past, and somewhere down the street, someone was playing guitar badly, but enthusiastically. It was a normal night, and for the first time, I realized my life was normal too. No secrets, no silent starvation, no pretending, just me. I didn't know if Brandon would get better. I didn't know if my parents would ever truly understand what they did to me. And honestly, it didn't matter anymore. Because I wasn't defined by their failures. I wasn't the girl in the shadows. I was Samantha Liu. A student, a creator, a survivor. And this life? It was mine. I stood up, tugged my scarf tighter, and headed back inside. Toward warmth, toward rest, toward the future.